And you're watching Vendor Corner, brought to you by Decades Reclaimed Vintage Depot, located in Central Florida. If you are ever in the area, please stop by. Reach out to us before you do, and maybe we'll get you on the show as a guest. Yeah, we would like to have some guests. Normally it's myself and Warren. Warren couldn't be here tonight, so it's just me. So let's just move right along with the show. Once again, it's Vendor Corner. This is a show for people who are vendors, like Warren and I, in a mall like Decades Reclaimed Vintage Depot, or those thinking about becoming vendors in a mall like Decades Reclaimed Vintage Depot. We talk about, we give you helpful hints, and we talk about different topics of our industry. We missed last week. We should have been on last week. We missed it. Sorry about that. We'll get back on track. So we're on tonight, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. Tonight's topic is contracts. Wow, there you go. Everybody signs one when they go into a mall and become a vendor. They are set up to guide the shop towards a common goal, to make money, to set standards, to keep things uniform and running well, to set expectations of what it is to become a vendor. So there you go. So those are the reasons for the contract. Uniformity inside the shop to let you know what's expected of you, whether that be, shifts or something like that. Here at Decades, we have parking restrictions on certain days. It tells you, it keeps it uniform by telling you what can and cannot be brought in the shop. You're going to see we're going to talk about this in a few minutes here, but it's never going to cover everything. So ultimately, it's up to the shop how to interpret that contract. It's not up to the vendor, and we'll talk about that decision later too. Again, here we go. Everyone has their own opinion on how things are supposed to be done. They're not all right, and they're not all wrong. So, and they're never really the same. So in your contract, if it states that something black and white, we're not allowed to park here on property on Saturdays. We have a kind of a satellite parking. We have to park in that because it's our busiest day, and we're very limited in parking. That's flat out. It's black and white. Now, we have a rule where we are 80% vintage and 20% vintage-like. Well, that 20% is vintage-like. It doesn't open the door for anything else in there. So we're 80 vintage. We consider collectible, upcycled, that kind of stuff in that 80. And then the 20% vintage-like, I guess that opens the door for items that are reproduction pieces and things like that. But it's really, now you get into the interpretation part. Somebody thinks something's vintage and then the shop doesn't. Ultimately, it is the shop's decision. Oh my gosh, I can't talk tonight. It's the decision of the establishment of whether it's vintage or not, really, at the end of the day. So there you go. You get a contract when you're first coming in. You get to read through the contract. If you find things that you don't like in the contract, it is my suggestion that you don't sign it and you don't become a vendor there. I don't think you're going to find many shops that are going to change the contract to suit your needs. Here at Decades, we change it annually. Every year we change it, but we're not making wholesale rule changes. We usually change the wording of things. And then I guess the only change that we made in 2025, we stated in the contract that we will not return tags in 2025. It's just become an issue for us, and many of the tags aren't following our tag rules, which are in the contract. So it's our feeling that we don't need to return them if you can't follow the rules. We're going to return them out of a courtesy until it becomes an issue, and then we're going to stop returning them. So that doesn't mean we're going to stop returning them, but if it becomes an issue, we will. And we've had the issues in the past. Hopefully, we're going to clear that up here at Decades. So the contract, again, if there's something in there, don't sign it. So if you go into a shop and you just have to have your tags back and they're not going to provide them for you and they stay in the contract, they're not going to provide them for you, don't sign, don't become a vendor there. So it's up to you. It's not up to you to sign the contract and then moan and groan about it and try to get it changed. They're never going to cover all aspects of everything. So again, it's up to the interpretation of the shop. Ultimately, it's up to the interpretation of the shop. And I'm not saying that just because I'm a shop owner. it's just what it is. It's a contract. So ultimately, it lies with the person that issues the contract and writes the contract. All right, so I put this out to everybody out on Facebook, that I needed thoughts on their current contract and what they would change about it. I didn't get a whole lot of comments. I really can't talk tonight. But I got a couple, and I found them very interesting. So I want to share those with you. Sherry said, in my mall's contract, it clearly states no clothing, but there are so many vendors filling their booth with used clothing. It isn't even vintage, and she would like to see the mall enforce the contract. Okay, so enforcing the contract, that's what she's talking about. It says it clearly states that there's no clothes allowed and that they're being brought in, and she wants to see that be enforced. I would agree. You got to enforce the contract. It's got to be fair for everybody. I wonder if there's a reason for them bending that, and if there is a reason, then it's time for a change in the contract. It's a brand new year, so they could go ahead and redo it for 2025 and add that allow clothes to come in. Maybe it's a policy, and they're allowing that to come in. But yeah, so if it is a policy change, that needs to be stated out to everybody that, hey, even though the contract states as a policy we are going to allow clothes to come in, and then change that in the next contract change. And then I had an anonymous member. They put out there they would love to see the advertising that the shop offers to bring in customers clearly outlined in the contract. So free social media, paid events, etc. And they think that should be outlined in the contract. I think it's a good idea. I think that's a question that you could ask, and hopefully the owner is going to be straight up with you. The management, whoever you're talking to at the time, is going to let you know exactly what they do for that. But outlining that in the contract, I've heard somebody say to me back in the day, I don't count your money, don't count mine. You're really asking them what expenses they have in the way of advertising. If somebody had asked me, I might give them a budget number, I might not. I would tell them we have room in the budget probably for advertising, and that we do it quite a bit. Here at Decades, we do a ton of social media, basically Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, of course here on YouTube. We have a newsletter that goes out every month through email. We do events quite often, and some of those events, like our 10/20 events, which is 10% off in everything in the store that is regularly priced, 20% back in the form of Decades dollars, which spends just like cash here at Decades. That 20% comes from the house, so that's quite a large expense for us. Yeah, I don't know. But to outline that in the contract would be difficult because, again, you're asking them how they're spending their money. Are what's next? You're going to ask what kind of toilet paper they use and how much they spend on cleaning supplies. Really, you just need to know, I guess, going in whether they do social media or not, and whether they do paid advertisement. Decades has done a ton of different things. We did a radio show promotion at one point. Again, we would never do that again because it was just a waste of money. So we won't do that. We've done printed ads in different publications. We won't do that again. I have a business background and have come from other businesses, not similar to this, but in some aspects the same, and where I've done billboards. I won't do that again. Just there's a whole host of things that, like mass mailing. I won't do that again. That I've tried, and it's just there's not a big result. The best thing for us is social media, both on the free side and paid side, and that's where we kind of tend to put our money. And then again with our events, but our events are promoted on Facebook, so you kind of have to do both. So again, when we have a 10/20 event, we're losing 20%. That's the house is giving that up, and then we're doing paid advertisement for that event. So we do it because it brings in a lot of people, and it works for us. But we found that other events, which are less intense as far as advertising goes, and they don't cost the shop as much at the end of the day. like yard sales. We'll have a regular yard sale to sell the items that we can't sell in the shop because, again, we're 80% vintage and then 20% vintage light. We have yard sales in our front parking lot, and those bring in a ton of people. The advertisement is free. We just put it up on Facebook and different pages and stuff like that. And then tons and tons of people come to the yard sale, and while they're here at the yard sale, they go ahead and shop in the shop. And it always makes a real good sales day. So, yeah, it'd be difficult to see that in a contract. So I think that's something that you would ask. You'd ask the owner, or you'd ask the management, whoever you're talking to at the time. But that was the only comments I got. I guess it's kind of a taboo thing, or people really don't care about their contracts. We don't have big contract issues here at Decades. We put them out. Everybody signs them. And we just kind of move on. Like I said, we don't make any big wholesale changes from year to year. Basically just wording. This year we are adding, and we're not returning the tags, but as a policy, we will continue to try to do that as long as it doesn't become an issue. But if it becomes an issue, we'll stop. And then we have the contract to fall back on. It says, well, contract clearly states we're not returning tags. It never stated that we did. So we've been here for a while now. It never, I want to go back and say it never stated that we did. So it's not like we're saying, well, we were giving them back to you, and here it was under the contract we were giving them back to you. Now we're not. We're stating in the contract that we were not. We never stated in the whole time we've been here that we would return the tags. We tried to, but lots of issues with the tags. So again, if the majority of the issues are coming from people not following the tag rules that are clearly in the contract and have been all along. And I'm not going to keep talking about that because probably doesn't have anything to do with you guys. So there you go. Back to contracts. They're set up by the shop. You have a decision whether you sign them or not. So clearly read through them. If you have something that you just can't live with, don't sign the contract, move on and find another place. They're never going to satisfy everyone. They can't cover everything. We try to limit ours. We just want it to be a couple pages. It doesn't cover all the aspects. There's still things that we have to remind the vendors, kind of like what they do on a shift when they're here, what time their shift starts and ends, all that kind of stuff. It's not stated in the contract. We just try to help them out with that. So there you go. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments down below. And if it's a question, I'll try to answer it in the next show. Hopefully Warren will be back with us next time, which will be in 2 weeks. But I'm your host, Jim, and you've been watching Vendor Corner, brought to you by Decades Reclaim Vintage Depot, located at 502 West Brennan Road, Lakeland, Florida, 33813. If there's ever like a topic you want me to discuss and you're willing to get on the phone, I could put you on the phone and you can do the show with us that way too. So that's a thought. All right, guys, have a great night. I'm Jim. We'll see you in 2 weeks.